Welcome to Let's Talk. This week we see the second part of my interview with actor, writer and director Siraj Zaidi, who talks about film distribution, teaching media, geopolitical tensions and faith. Don't forget to like on Facebook or subscribe on YouTube. Thanks for watching. Let's Talk.
I was participating in talk shows quite a lot here in radios and things like that. Perhaps I was articulate enough to understand what was going on, and so people were finding my views quite effective. And then that led me to a bigger picture, because I do believe in peace, because peace equals stability, stability equals prosperity. Those nations who have progressed vis-a-vis Japan after Second World War, look at, as the biggest challenge in the world is Germany, is for that matter. The countries who do fought are now at peace with each other, and their prosperity is there. They're doing okay. The global crisis is on aside, but at least they are looking after their nation. They're surviving as a thriving democracy and running their nations effectively. Why Middle East has been cajoled and been shaken to the roots, because perhaps the world want to control that gold pot of oil, and in fact want to control that, and so therefore this was quite fascinating for me. And then it was reflected to, then lo and behold, 9/11 happened while I was 14, 15, 16 years ago in 2011. So while my personal journey of trying to make films and trying to make sense of as an artist was going on, and not complaining about my work as an actor, because I was getting work as an actor, not regularly, but whenever there's a part for me, my agent will call me up and he says, "Siraj, this is a good script for you. Read that, go for the audition, meet the directors, meet the casting director." And I was doing all that. So I was pretty much happy that I was getting enough exposure and enough work. So I was getting satisfied. Yet at the same time, I formed the company. The production company at the time was called Meme Productions and Media Endeavor Entertainment Management. And under the aegis of that company, I sort of, progressed, not by making film, by importing my Indian films, Bollywood films that I was very much attached to it, by distributing those films into cinema in Ireland, in Dublin. So Irish Film Institute was my hangout at that point, and I used to hang there quite a lot. And I met the director of the Irish Film Institute, Pete Walsh, who was a programmer. God rest his soul, he's no longer around. Pete said, "Yes, Raj, I was in Birmingham scheduling these programs. Why don't you do it here? It'll be very popular." So I ended up distributing Indian cinema, and the first Indian cinema that was shown in Ireland was my film that I brought in. Not my production film, but I imported as a distributor. I linked with a chain of distribution in England, and I started importing. That really sustained me as an actor, as an artist. The work, the income that I was getting from distribution of those films. The community reacted very well. The Pakistani community, the Indian community, the Bangladeshi community. They all loved to watch their films. At that time, they were watching on VHS cassettes and tapes and things like that. In the cinema on a bigger screen, hello, there was a paradise for them. So I enjoyed that myself, and that lasted for 10 years, good 10 years. Nothing lasts forever, but then technology moved on and things like that. And but the thing is, the journey goes on, your life goes on. And
You'd mentioned that you were teaching media,
yes,
at a private school. So again, because you've developed the film distribution here and all the experiences you were having with the way that we effectively get to see people. An important part of the journey would then be, I would have thought, teaching, especially if it's media What sort of things were you encouraging the students to investigate?
I was strictly following the what do you call it,
Syllabus.
London syllabus
Yeah.
of 779 program of. It was a private college, ATC, Advanced Technology College, and they had this very strict syllabus of. I've forgotten the actual title of that, but remember the name of that syllabus called 779 program. It was again imported from England, a standard where you have to cover print, radio and television. Cinema was very peripheral and very small. So in print, I was teaching the wider aspect of print journalism, how print journalism works, how the magazine journalism works, how the PR industry works. I was learning myself. I was not educated in the media sector myself. I was coming from a drama school background. But I was reading quite a lot, learning myself and delivering. This man who was running the private college needed someone cheap who can deliver these courses. So I was literally delivering those courses and syllabus. Then radio was my experience in BBC World Services. So I was quite comfortable and happy enough to do that and to delegate somebody who was looking after a bit of radio. Television and cinema was my forte. And then I was teaching all that. So it was quite an interesting journey for me to teach the media studies in all aspect of that. The computer, the Google world was not there at the time, as you know, in the 80s.
What critical thinking aspects were involved in the course?
Well, I suppose what I encouraged my students was to formulate their own judgment and to be original rather than and to be harsh and critical about the stories they're covering and not to fall in traps where the stories have been fed to them by PR companies, which were very norm at the time. And I suppose, is the same. The 60-70% of the newspaper is filled with the PR material, and you just change top and tail and you rehash the headlines and you print that as it is.
There's a term that I've just heard called journalism.
Journalism. That's right. That's exactly it was. And I said, look, guys, if you really want to become a successful journalist, you have to be original and you have to break the news in such a way that you was the one who broke the news in the most original way you can. Of course, you read about journalism as much as you want and all the rest of it. But at the same time, if you can make yourself, original guy. And I brought a very established writers from the Irish Times into the classroom. Fintan O'Toole was my good friend at the time. Paul Cullen, who became a big writer. All those guys. And I said, look, these are the people who are on the ground, breaking the news, making it. Similarly, I took the class to a studio in RTE. I show them around and get them first-hand experience and knowledge and all that stuff. I must say that I look back into those years. One of the guys, Kieran Hancock, is the very successful Irish Times journalist now and a very established business editor. Kieran was in my class. I taught Kieran. Yeah. Doyle, what's his name? Conan Doyle, who got a beautiful job in TV3 as a cameraman and very successful cameraman he became. So a good shining example of my class, and there was a hunger among those people to go into the industry and to make it happen. So perhaps I was doing something right by cajoling them from inside, and that was my drive from as an actor. The pushing is you want to go into in this industry. It's the hardest industry in the world to go into, media industry, film industry, and things like that. I was coming from the training background, and I'd gone through the whole rigorous training, so I was strong enough to translate all that into my students, although not in a drama sense, but in a journalism sense. And there was a few girls who became very successful as well, went to Canada and to America to become a reasonably successul a journalist. But that's what it is. Like it is a challenge in each stages of journalism, that whatever the field you have chosen, some would feel comfortable with print, some would feel, as I said, the digital media was not there at the time. So I was unable to. Now it's taken over by digital world, and the whole game of online writing and an online publication has taken over by the traditional way of doing business in the media industry. But while those things were happening, as I said, I was relating back to the bigger picture of the world. I was always drawn from my, as I said, as a Muslim person, a sense of justice and sense of injustices which was committing in the world through the wars. The war is something, when I was drawn into Northern Ireland to establish that as a piece, that was the biggest high for my life, that I managed to get a 4-part television documentary about the peace process. I said, why not? There's a peace process in the world. Why cannot we achieve peace in the Kashmir, in our country, where I come from, between Pakistan and India? Why Middle East is becoming regularly a land of war? Why the billions and billions of weapons have been, been shoved into that land, and who's suffering? People are suffering.
I think that's one of the things that I discovered from being in Northern Ireland again, is that when you got to meet people on the ground, you began to realise it didn't matter which side they were on, they had the same aspirations again. So it wasn't the people on the ground that was driving that conflict.
Yeah.
It was a higher
Absolutely.
group.
It's always the case.
Yeah.
It's always the common man wants to live in peace, wants to feed their kids, wants to send their kids to a good school, to educate themselves, and live a reasonably comfortable, okay life. And that is the basic necessity of human beings.
Now, you've mentioned the geopolitics and the things that are changing. We've seen, I think, in a very short period of time, in the last maybe 10 years, maybe less, some massive changes. I mean, I taught media, and I kind of thought at one point, how can you get people, we're critically thinking about everything, how can you get people to go to war? Because in this day and age, I couldn't see how that could happen. But then within a few short years, I began to see how media could be used to change people's way of thinking, or stop them thinking, so they could easily, through emotions, be
Justify.
driven
Yeah.
in a certain direction.
It's a certain direction. It's exactly, media manipulates. Media plays a huge role. The channels will become the mouthpiece of those who are in control, who wants to push their policies behind. Now it's much easier for them because the digital media, because the web world, it's easier for them to put whatever they want to put on their agenda, and therefore the whole culture of fake news came about, and the whole culture of but there is, as I said, ethics. If you have simple and pure heart and you want to tell the truth, the first casualty of truth in a war is the truth. The truth never comes about. Bigger pictures, I think there's enough resources in the world for everybody to share and to pay a reasonably okay price so they can actually have those things. If you have a cherry orchard in your back garden and you are surplusly producing cherries, I will go and say, look, I want to buy 10 kilos of cherries. Here's the price. Whatever you decide, I want to make jams and have cherries for me. No, I want to take over your garden. I want to lock you up in somewhere else and take over and steal your entire cherry crop. That is wrong. That's immoral. That's unethical. And so stealing of oil for those people who deserve oil for their own benefit, for their own economy, for their own survival, is ethically wrong. You cannot do that. If God has given resources in this land to everybody, share it. And by sharing it, you trade it. The whole world of trade exists out there. You help each other to create a peaceful environment so the trade can flow and people can get benefit out of it. Everybody could be happy for that.
You're talking about commodities there. One of the things that we've been talking throughout this interview is stories. And I think one of the important things that we all should be sharing is our own stories.
Oh, absolutely.
And that our stories are actually important. Do you feel that's being prohibited?
People are afraid. People are afraid. They are living in their own pockets. They are apprehensive about sharing their stories. They're apprehensive about telling what really they want to. In other words, as we were talking earlier on, speaking of their mind is not an easy thing anymore, because the information can be twisted and can be used against the person. and things like that. People can be framed for what they've said. So people do become really cautious. So what they say, how they say, how much they can say and on the digital world these days, because you never know. One image, one word can go anywhere in the world.
Well, one of the frightening things about the current technology was I know the banks were starting to use your face as a way of security on your cards and things, as opposed to the chips that are on the cards. Mm-hmm. But the technology is now getting, they can actually recreate your face in 3D. Mm-hmm. Not only can they recreate your face, they can now recreate your voice.
That's right.
So they can create images of any of us saying anything they want that we've never actually said.
Said anything, yeah.
And that's pretty scary, because it doesn't, one of the reasons for bringing in some of the security systems that they now have was that if, people kind of going, well, if you haven't done anything wrong, you shouldn't have anything to fear. Mm. But you don't have to do anything wrong.
That's right. The people can get created. Yeah, artificially can create. The artificial intelligence is becoming smarter and smarter, and with the technology comes the responsibility. I always say to my students at that time, even, and now I always say that the more savvy you are, the more careful you have to be, because with the responsibility, if you have been given a power, you are more responsible for your power. It doesn't matter how big or small institution you are heading. As a film director, you are more responsible towards the story you are telling to the world. As an editor, you are more responsible to cut it in such a way that you are true to the story you are telling. So therefore, again, harking back to the faith, if your heart is clean, if you are a conscious person, see, what happens is that once your conscience is eliminated, once you're corrupted up here, once you're corrupted in your heart, and that is derailing yourself from the faith, from the essentials of the basics of any faith, let alone Christianity, Judaism and Islam, who have similarity. I'm also a keen member and a founder of Multi-Faith in Dublin, Interfaith Dialogue, that I created 17 years ago with my friends here. And we are learning about each other, that these are the basics values. So you should not be frightened about the development of the technology. Technology can develop at any level. Yes, there's no, harnessing on that. One doesn't want to stop that. Yes, go to the Mars, live in Mars, create a beautiful colony in Mars and Moon and all that. Have a wonderful life outside Earth, but don't destroy the Earth. Don't kill. Don't be devious to other human beings. Other human beings also have a right to exist. So what if they're less privileged? So what if they're not have resources as you have? But you don't have a right that because you have a superior gun to eliminate and wipe out them and then take over their resources and enjoy that. That a certain percentage of the people's wealth is enormous and the rest of the world is still suffering. I mean, yesterday I was in conversation with the Indian ambassador, and I was saying that, look, torrential rain has happened in monsoon in the city of Mumbai, and it gets flooded, and the life gets choked. People are going to moon, and we cannot solve the same simple problem of flooding of a city, a powerful city, the economic powerhouse of the country get paralyzed for 10 days, for 2 days, and we're praying that monsoon rain will stop so the water can find its way to the Arabian Sea and to the canal. So these are the practical issues, the starvation, the images we see in Africa, all those things. The rest of the world is not privileged as the first world or the second world is. So where are the responsibilities for people? NGOs, few individual organizations doing it on their own? No, that is not the solution. The solution is to collaborate at international forums, to collaborate and discuss these things. Not in Davos and once a year, the rich of the richest to go and enjoy themselves and to talk about a few billions are going to be flown from here to there and friends are exchanging, views. No. Those are the things are much more, those are the visions of United Nations after Second World War. But what happened to United Nations? We all know that. These are the things that if we work for humanity to solve the human problem of a man-made created problem and fight against what nature creates a problem for man, yes, we would be creating a reasonably better world. And I suppose a thinker, a writer, a filmmaker, a creative person always harking back to those issues, regardless of what's happening into their own life.
I think as a writer, what was interesting is you talked about the conscience, and the word integrity came up in my mind, and I was thinking about how, as an individual, even when you don't think anybody's watching, you have to apply certain principles. And I think we probably live in a world where maybe people aren't thinking that. Maybe I'm judging someone too much, but it's that inward thinking about should I be doing, what's the right thing to do, what's the responsible thing to do, and how can I contribute to helping this world be better.
Absolutely. I mean, just to be true to yourself, as you are true to yourself, you have to be true to your work, to your stories that you're trying to make, and try to and not to be defeated by the forces that are dumbing you down, that are literally forcing you down by lack of finance, by lack of whatever you name it, as the circumstances around you. So, regardless of that, you have to be absolutely pure in your approach of work. If you are pure and hardworking in your approach, success will come to you. In Islam, it says that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that if you are hardworking and honest person, Allah will help those who are on the right track, on the right path. And the guidance will come. Only the guidance will come to the people who are not treacherous, who are not, off track, so to speak. So the guidance will, some super force will guide you, whatever what you call it, angelic force, or calling, or a voice of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, whatever it is, it will guide you to reach towards your ultimate destination. And that is the most powerful thing to recognize, that you do have that in yourself. Each individual has that. What happens in the process? That get muddied, that get blackened, that get, sort of over dusted. And so people don't recognize that and stop believing in that faith. They walk away from the faith, in fact. The lack of faith in super higher power is the biggest loss of humanity. If human beings have lost that, and we are facing that, people don't recognize the superpowers anymore. The only superpowers they recognize is the American gun, and that is the only superpower we have. That a mighty gun is more powerful, mighty bomb is more powerful than any other power. Perhaps people are forgetting that we all have inner power in ourselves, and people have achieved with those inner powers, individuals. Going back to the personalities, our prophet Jesus was a huge example of that in Islam. He guided people without any weapons and army and things like that. He led people to the right path. Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam did the same thing. His progeny did the same thing over the years, survived, and in reality faced the challenges of the world. Same as Moses did the same thing. All our prophets of the past have done the same journey. So our inspirations are drawn from these personalities. And in a contemporary world, if you look at the politicians, Gandhi is there, Mandela is there. All these people were subject to extreme torture, brutality, and challenges, but they kept going. They kept going, and they believed in themselves and in the higher power. And I suppose that belief has to be aqidah in Arabic word. There's a word called in Urdu as well. Is a very core fundamental point that you have a belief. I have a belief that Northern Ireland will be peace forever. Regardless of the Sinn Féin agenda of joining the 6 counties or the rest of 26 counties in the Republic. No, we have achieved the peace. We have traveled the journey of peace now. So if it can happen there, why can't it happen in the rest of the world? Why can't it happen in Palestine? Why can't it happen in Kashmir? Why can't it happen in those warring zones which are very much at the core of, no, we are trying to destroy them. Poor country like Yemen, who is the poorest of the poorest before they started a war in that, is now reduced to rubble. Millions of people are starving there. Millions of people are destabilized. What was their crime? The crime was that the neighboring country had a wonderful, powerful weapon supplied by superpower for no reason to destroy them. But that destruction is going on. Syria is another example. And so on and so forth. So we never learn and we never stop. It has to stop somewhere. I want the intellectuals of the world to rise up and to form a parallel UN perhaps, and make up. Chinese should come from China, Japanese should come from, Koreans should come and form the congregation of intellectuals in another form. Perhaps they should sit in Stormont Building and form that Northern Ireland Parliament, be the peace parliament of the world.
I think from what I'm seeing that we are definitely moving towards something new because the old is going to fall. And in a way, I pray that it's more spiritual led in what
has to be spiritual.
Because without that element, then it becomes quite. Well, the reverse is quite horrendous.
Absolutely.
In what you can actually think of. And I think what I find that's interesting, what you said, is about how within you're led by this spirit, this faith, and I recognise that within yourself as well. Myself, to the point where my faith is Christian. I can't deny. I want to understand, and that. Oh, and I'm hitting my mic. That's what's driving me forward to discover why I believe what I believe, and to examine why. Not that I have to force other people to believe what I believe, but that my journey is to understand. That's the journey that I have to go on to understand why I believe what I recognise that within you as that driving force.
Absolutely.
And I think I can see from a Christian's perspective, or that I'm on the same journey you're on.
Absolutely. Islam is partly Christian. If you read the scripture of Quran, Holy Quran, you'll see that Christianity is a bigger part of Holy Quran. Judaism also a bigger part of Holy Quran. So it's not in isolation, it's in succession. And successive faiths have always achieved more because they are in peace with the previous faith. So as long as you have that inner sense, it doesn't matter. The religion of faith is no religion. It is a common faith. It is a common faith. Whether you call it a Christian faith or Jewish faith or Hindu faith or Sikh faith, they all have the commonality. And therefore, in practice, yes, you may have a different way of practicing it, singing hymns in a church in a different way than I would pray to Allah in a different way, and bow down and submit myself is a different way of Hindu chanting, in a different way of. That is a manifestation of understanding of our faith. That's not a faith itself. Faith itself is the core faith, is the same thing.
Yeah. That's
what it is. That's what unites us.
Yeah, which is why when we recognise that as individuals, there is no need for me to change you to become a Christian.
Absolutely.
There's no need for you to change me to become a Muslim.
Absolutely.
What we need to do is nurture each other in the journey that we're on.
That's right. That's right.
But also communicate to one another so that we can, by talking and sharing our stories, begin to see the commonalities between us.
That is the biggest challenge. This is and that is not happening enough.
No.
That is not happening enough. If you want to see that that peace and prevailing in the world, and people are coming to terms with each other and having a good solution for the world, because that's what we need. I mean, you could be enriched by enormous amount of resources, and I'm not talking about economic resources, than any other resources, that can be benefit to somebody who's handicapped with those resources, if you're sharing those resources, and vice versa. So this is where the world, as I understood the world in my few years in this world, is that sharing is caring. And if you are happy enough to share what you have in your stories, in your thoughts, in your resources, in whatever it is, you would achieve a lot more for greater good of the world and the humanity at the end of the matter. Countries can govern their own countries better if they don't have to police their people harshly, if they are providing them enough guidance. I'm also a member of the police force here, Garda Síochána, in an ad hoc way, not in a professional way, but an ad hoc way. I've been contributing for the multi-faith background. And I have a discussion with my colleagues there that look, you guys are the unique force in the world. You don't carry weapons, you don't enforce, people don't get terrorized or frightened by looking at you, because you are the guardian of the people. That's why you call guards. You know, you don't call yourself police because you're policing them. You know, effectively you are basically protecting them from the hostile environment of society. And this is what it is, the comfort factor that you get by meeting someone who would say, hey, I'm secure with you. It doesn't matter what faith you are in. It doesn't matter which way you pray to your God. And your God is different than my God and things like that. And that's the comfort factor which you draw from each other, that you're not frightened to travel the different parts of the world when you meet somebody from a different faith. And I mean, this is what Islam is all about. Islam spread in the world by trade, by peaceful talk, by interfaith, by offering them, the resources. In Islam, the offering of resources is the prime duty of you, that you make sure that your neighbors have enough food and you're not having a feast in your house. And this is the responsibility of Islam. Islam teaches the fundamental looking after another human being. And if you are looking after another human being, whether they're shelter need, whether it's food need, food is a very basic need. And we look into this, the kind of corruption going on in the world about owning the grains and things like that. And, then you come to a conclusion that where are we heading? Do we have to learn from each other or not? And these are the fundamental questions that we must work on and form alliances, make forums, make time. I mean, the forum that we met in Rostrevor was a wonderful place. The serene environment of the sea, the mountains, and the house, and the environment they created for meeting people. That they're comfortable speaking about their faith, sharing faith, and talking, and perhaps offering the solution. Because we all have solutions for things. And man-made problems can be solved by man-made solutions. This is the utopia of the world. But no, we are drawing into conflict all the time. We're hearing about, we're electing people who, talking hostile languages on media and fake news and tweeting and all. What is this nonsense? I don't believe in tweeting and cajoling the world by their tweets. And my point is where I'm pointing towards. I don't have to articulate that. But this is what technology, the big use of technology is not to misguide people. The positive use of technology is to be positive about things and be positive about peace rather than creating enemies. And seeing that this is a different faith, so this is enemy. As long as we do not create those games for children who do believe in playing that they have to eliminate the enemy. These are people, PS4, these games, kids are growing up with that mentality. So when they go out and join the army, they have enemies out there. Enemies they never... I'll tell you an example, a story that I've been told by a wonderful Iraqi man here. When the soldiers moved in Baghdad, this man was so curious to see how the soldiers were. He invited them, and he was convincing them enough to bring them inside from the tank. And the soldier got off the tank, and he went there. He said, "Look, come here. I'm having a breakfast." And he fried an egg for him. And he offered the chapati bread with egg, and said, "This is our breakfast. Have it. Then you go and do your duty, whatever you're doing." Little he knew that this man is out there to kill him. You know, this is the kind of thing I'm talking about, is that if that man is so innocent and so simple enough to invite his killer inside his house and feed him a simple fried egg with the bread, and hoping that, you know, that he would not destroy him. And here's the young man. I heard another soldier's story. They're now coming up those stories that, you know, the young man who said how he's now in remorse and repentant mood to say that, "Look, I was motivated by my superiors."
Sadly, we have to come to an end.
Yeah.
And I usually ask my guests if there's a couple or more points you'd like to talk about that you never got the chance to talk about to conclude the interview.
Well, I suppose what I would like to see in ideal world, and I want to talk about, is there should be more opportunity for collaboration, and at all levels. And I'm not talking about the work level. The best successful work is a collaborative work, in our business particularly. You know, if the cameraman is good, if the screenwriter is good, if the director is good, if the script is good, if the actors are good, the musicians are good, the product will be good. And so therefore, if we can collaborate on a bigger issues of the world and be conscious of the righteousness of the task, then we strive hard enough to draw the conclusion that this can be solved, this solution can be found. If there's a lack of finance, we can go where the finances are. If there's a lack of resources, we can go, rather than the stories that we hear since 6 o'clock in the morning in my radio until the 8 o'clock, night time. Problem. Blaming. One party, political party, blaming the other. One, Fianna Fáil is playing Fine Gael is in Irish context we're talking about. Similarly, if those blame games should stop, if people will come and do not perceive another human being, another faith, as an enemy. Human beings are not enemy of each other. This is what I would hope for the world, that if we come together on common platforms and forums and discuss and meet and be civil enough to understand that we have a responsibility towards the world we live in, the world we have inherited. We were not asked to come in this world. Somebody else made a decision when we plop here in the world. And then we grown up and then we realize, oh my God, there's so many problems here. What are we doing about it? No, solution is not that you look after just your narrow interest and mind your own family and mind your own community and mind your own little world. No, the responsibility is bigger. That would make, I think, the world a better place to live for all of us.
Siraj, thank you for being my guest on Let's Talk.
Many thanks for asking me to be your guest.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We have more on the way, so please subscribe to this channel and check out the link below if you'd consider becoming a patron to help us keep making more content. Thanks for watching.